What's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Barushmo, just in case you did not know. So we're going to go over the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to take a look at the roster. We're going to take a look at the schedule. I'm going to give you my projected starters and how I think the team will finish the year. I picked the Seahawks because, man, a team that you think ain't going to play well, they typically come ready to play, like regardless of whatever problems they're having in the secondary, on the offensive line. Overall, I think they did a few interesting things through the draft, to say the least. I do think that they have improved on the offensive line, not hugely, but a big thing for them was the defensive line, right? But we'll get into that when we get into that. Become a bro and subscribe. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoy the video, and share it if you like. So let's just take a look at the roster so we can get to the heart of these points. We're going to start with the offense. I mean, Russell Wilson, what more can you say about him? He's one of the best quarterbacks in football, one of the most underrated or underappreciated, I would say. I think he was right in the MVP race last year with Lamar Jackson. It's just he doesn't get a lot of love. This guy, he does a lot for this team, and I think they're starting to give back to him a little bit. Let's go over the offensive line. It's typically been one of the biggest weaknesses on this team is the offensive line, and I think they did improve in regards somewhere. Dwayne Brown, he is still one of the most steady left tackles in all of football, and it's very hard. That's probably one of the toughest positions to get right in all the NFL, outside of probably quarterback, is tackle, and they got a really good one right there, granted in the twilight years of his career. On the other side, I think we're probably going to see Brandon Shell, but they did bring in Cedric Abuye, who he's kind of struggled. He struggled with injury, and then he struggled on the field. That's why I say Brandon Shell, while that might not, I don't think there's really a pretty option right now at this point between the two, but I give the edge to Brandon Shell. And then on the interior, you got Phil Haynes, but I think Damian Lewis is definitely going to be that right guard. He is exactly what the Seahawks like on their interior, on their offensive line in general. Big hog mollies with a little athletic ability. While I think Damian Lewis isn't the best athlete for his size, he's pretty darn good. He's a mauler in the run, and I like it there. I like them bringing in BJ Finney at center. It's definitely a better alternative to Joey Hunt, who I think been undersized, has some potential. Just a really rough rookie year. And at the other guard position, you could go with Ethan Posick, but he's just, he was a little beat up last year, but he's just never really been good. He's never, I think, had an actual good game. It's definitely going to be Mike Ipati, who's actually been pretty solid throughout his whole career, and he should be the starter there. So overall, I think right tackle, I think, is easily probably the thinnest, weakest position on this line, but it's definitely I think a better line than Russell Wilson's used to having. And then looking at the playmakers, of course, you return Tyler Lockett, who's a monster, whether it's on the outside or in the slot. DK Metcalf, who had a banger of a rookie year. They didn't ask him to do too much as far as a route tree. They might expand that this year, but the guy, he is fast, he is physical. You gotta love him. David Moore's always been pretty solid in a complementary type role. Bringing in Philip Dorsett, who also brings a lot of speed on the outside. And then also drafting Freddie Swain, who I thought was pretty interesting. It's just another fast guy. Aaron Fuller, if he makes the team, could probably maybe come in there and play a little slot, but I think that's a big if. I think the weirdest thing was how much they've addressed the tight end position, which was one of the positions I thought they were pretty solid at. Again, aside from injury, I know they've had a ton of injuries there, but they bring Greg Olsen, who coming off a pretty decent year, but he has struggled with injuries the last 2 seasons. Will Disley, who was having a monster campaign before injury. I think he's a solid tight end too. Then Luke Wilson, another vet there. Jacob Hollister, who I actually really liked at the end of last season. He had a few drops, but I thought he was pretty solid in coverage. Kobe Parkinson, I don't like as much. And then same with Steven Sullivan. These guys aren't true tight ends by any means. They are kind of one-trick ponies. They won't help in the run game whatsoever. They should be only put on the field to do one simple thing, and that is to run straight and be big. They're very athletic, very fast. They don't offer too much in a route in their route tree. And I can tell you this because a lot of my stuff is draft analysis, and I took a long look at these guys. Steven Sullivan was one of my favorite guys, or I don't want to say one of my favorite, but one of my dark horses in the draft because I think he does well in this position of being a guy you just put on the field to be a mismatch. So it'll be interesting. They got a lot of guys there. Same with running back. They have so many running backs. Chris Carson, he might have some injury woes, but he's been very effective. Jod Penny was pretty effective last season. Bringing in Carlos Hyde, who's always been average, if not a little above average his whole career. That's not fair to say. I think he's always been pretty above average. It's just never worked out with teams. And then you also have Travis Homer, who actually was pretty solid in a kind of, I think, went more on passing downs. He was much better on passing downs. And then they also drafted DJ Dallas out of Miami, another Miami guy. And I think that's kind of interesting. He's kind of more of an all-around back. So, yeah, it's like, will they go into the season with 5 running backs? It's going to be interesting, nonetheless. I like the addition of Anthony Gordon, someone they can work on, and it can be a solid backup for Russell Wilson. But this offense, for the most part, it looks very similar to last year, but I think they made a few small additions on the offensive line, and it should be much better. To be honest, the biggest woe here is going to be the defensive line, defense in general. They lost a lot. Especially on the interior. Honestly, I can only see maybe 3 guys that will get playing time on the interior here, with Poona Ford, Jaron Reed being definitely the starters, and maybe throw a little DeMarcus Christmas in there. But I think that's kind of, I don't know, because it's not like he's seen a lot of time. I think it was a little beat up last year, so it'll be interesting nonetheless. But the other 2 guys in front of them actually are very solid. But then I think they have a wealth of options on the edge, which is the interesting thing. I'm just taking a look at Christmas to see specifically. Yes, he was placed on injured reserve right before the season. Okay. I'm gonna say, because he didn't see any snaps last year, but I know they've talked a big game about him. So yeah, this edge is gonna be stinking interesting. They returned 2 former Seahawks in Maui and Bruce Irvin. Those guys, well, Irvin in particular, he's definitely in the later part of his career, so I imagine there's going to be a pretty big rotation there at edge. You're going to see a lot of different guys coming in and out. You see LJ Collier. He's like, I'm going to prove last year was just kind of a fluke. I'm going to prove I'm much better than that, so we might see a lot of him in the star rotation. But he only saw 152 snaps last year, and he didn't do well on those 152 snaps. But keep in mind, TCU players in general, especially ones in the trenches, they're not really taught they're not really taught technique or how to really develop it. So they typically come into the NFL as like wild athletes that need a lot of work. So maybe he puts it all together. Maybe we'll see. But until then, it's definitely going to be a rotation there. 2 guys. They want to address it twice in day 2 if they didn't think so. But 2 guys I'm very, very excited about. Alton Robinson, a guy who I think will excel in like a Y9 on somewhere at the 7 tech, 6, maybe even 6 tech, preferably 7 or 9, 8 or 9 tech. He's a guy with a very explosive first step. So I like that. I like Darrell Taylor as well out of Tennessee. This guy was very Very good, very effective pass rusher. He did this in the SEC. Granted, a lot of times he lined up on the right side, so he was typically facing the worst tackle. But he was still very effective. He ended on a hot streak. This guy was, before this draft, a lot of people pegged this guy as a sure first rounder for years. So the guy's immensely talented. Don't take anything away from him. Sean Green is a guy, I don't know if he even gets in the rotation this time around. But he might. Like I said, they're pretty deep with no true starters. So it'll be interesting what they do there on the defensive line. And then linebacker, let's go a little in depth with the linebacker, because this team, only about 20-25% of the time they actually ran sub packages. So a lot of the time they were in base, so you're gonna base formation. So you're gonna see a lot of 3 linebacker sets. So without question, it's gonna be Bobby Wagner, one of the even in the later part of his career, one of the best linebackers in all of football. KJ Wright, probably gonna be another guy a lot of fans love. I don't blame you. He used to be one of my favorite players. Not saying he isn't anymore, but realistically, he is a liability in coverage. He allowed 725 yards in coverage last season. If you don't know, that's terrible. That's awful. So will he improve? I don't know. He's another guy in the later part of his career. Third linebacker, probably going to be Jordan Brooks here. They spent a first-round pick on him because he was a high-character guy. He's got a nose for the football. He's a downhill runner when it comes to, he will take on blockers. He's stupid strong. Bit of an athlete, but never really tested in coverage there at Texas Tech. He was schemed very well to where he wouldn't be a liability in coverage. So it'll be interesting to see how he actually pans out. You can make a case of a few guys that didn't see a ton of snaps last year, but were involved. Bodie Barton, who was pretty terrible last year. Granted, it was a rookie year. And then guy I expect, I don't know, we might probably see more on special teams, but I think he could do well as like a drop back linebacker, Ben Burr-Kirven, former, I believe, Washington linebacker. So this may be a guy to keep an eye on. And then the secondary, it's like, okay, the secondary needs to improve. I think they did a great job getting Diggs last year. He's one of the better safeties in all of football. He played extremely well last year. Bradley McDougall, I guess it's a down year. It was a down year by his standards, but he's an above average starter. He's a reliable starter. He played close to 1,100 snaps. So I don't know how much of Marquise Blair we're going to see, who actually played particularly well in limited snaps. So we might see a little bit of him on the field. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. You got Chris Miller there. They got out Baylor. I don't think we'll see much of him at all. Shaquille Griffin, very, very good corner. Opposite him, not so much. Trey Flowers was kind of a major liability, and it's a shame because he played 1,100 snaps last year. But they brought in Quinton Dunbar. Looks like he will be good to play. Looks like probably no suspension upon maybe a further investigation. It might change, but at this point in time, it looks like he will be good to go. And he was a baller last year. He was really good. So having him starting opposite, then you got a solid secondary, especially if you're mainly going from base or going into base packages. If they do go into those sub packages, though, Ugo Amadi is a guy to watch out for. A guy who, in particularly, didn't play a lot. More so, it was kind of special team related. But he did see, let me see if I get an exact number of snaps last year. Yeah, he only played 101 snaps, so we might see a little bit more of him. I kind of hope so. I was really high on him coming out of the draft. Outside of that, though, not much depth there at the corner position. You can say Trey Flowers, maybe he'll be better. I don't know. It was pretty bad last year. So the defense, it'll be interesting. I think kind of my dark horse, honestly, on this defense is Eli Mercer. And he probably won't even make the team, but he's a linebacker / edge guy from Albany. He was why they have him listed as a linebacker, because he's an undersized edge guy. So they're trusting him to come back. Hell of an athlete. Heckles of an athlete. This guy is very good. maybe they use him sparingly to come in and maybe be a blitzer. I don't know if he makes a team, so it'll be interesting. So I don't know. It's hard to have a lot of faith in this defense. Let's just go ahead. We're going to look at the schedule. As always, NFC West, incredibly tough. A much improved Arizona Cardinals team, a Rams team that's working out some of their issues, and a 49ers team that's just they're coming from a Super Bowl loss. They're going to be playing hard. On top of that, they will have to face the NFC East. So they luck out with games against the Giants and the Redskins, but you got to face a Dallas team that looks like a kind of a juggernaut and a Philadelphia team that they always play pretty darn good. And then you get to face the cupcake of the AFC, being the AFC East. Is cupcake fair to say? I'll say this, at first glance, yes. They don't look pretty. I mean, they look pretty to play if you're an opposing team, but you get to face a New England team that is post Tom Brady. You get to face a Miami Dolphins team that is kind of feels like officially in the first year of a true rebuild, now having their franchise quarterback who might not even be on the field by the time you play in week 4. You might be still facing Fitzmagic himself, and what do you expect from that, man? The guy it says it in the name, Fitzmagic. But then you face a Jets team who tried to get better, and then a Buffalo team that's actually pretty darn scary. On top of that, they will be facing who else? As we go through this, the Vikings, which don't sleep on the Vikings. You can laugh at them about their secondary, but it's still a very good Vikings team. It's a team that Kirk Cousins statistically he was the best quarterback in the fourth quarter. So, and then Atlanta Falcons, don't sleep on Matt Ryan. Quit talking about 28-3. Matt Ryan's still a very good quarterback. This team, they made some improvements. They should be very competitive next year. This is a team that actually, did they beat? I think, in fact, they did. They did beat the 49ers in San Fran. So don't sleep on this team. So overall, I think the schedule is actually pretty favorable outside of the division. So let's just go ahead. Let's get into the projected starters, and then I'll give you a prediction on how I think this team will fare. So let me actually do a little switcheroo. And of course, we got Russell Wilson as your starter with Chris Carson penciled in, but that could be subject to change. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, definitely be the receivers that see the most time. Greg Olsen, Will Disley, given 2 tight end sets, because I don't think you keep 6 linebackers on the roster if you're not going to be running 2 tight end sets. And then the offensive line with Brown, Upati, Finney, Lewis, and Shell. Like I said, it's not a great looking offensive line, but it's not bad. I would say this is at least an average to above average offensive line. Looking at the defensive starters, there we go. Then I got Benson and Bruce, man in the edge, but there will just expect Collier to get his, and then maybe a little sprinkle of Robinson and Taylor. And then on the inside, Reed and Ford, there's not much other competition there. Wright and Wagner will be your starting linebackers like they have been for the last 300 years, as well as Jordan Brooks. I anticipate they spent a first round on him. I expect him to get a lot of time. And then you got Griffin, you got Dunbar, Diggs, and McDougal. Maybe in the 20 to 25% they go into maybe a nickel. You might see a Ugo Madi there, but at the end of the day, I have this team. They're kind of hard to protect because even last year when they kind of felt so, they were 11-5. So, tough team to project. I think division's going to be much tighter this year. I got them at a 9-7. That might be the floor for the team. I think 8-8 could be even fair, but I don't know. It's kind of hard projecting like the Seahawks at anything less than 10 wins. But that's just kind of how it happened. I go week by week and I try to anticipate what teams will be doing that week. So I got them at 9-7. could be a lot higher. 10-6 maybe feels a little bit more right. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. And just pepper it with all that hate, because I love it. But if you're going to do that, provide some context. Let's have a good conversation at the very least, because I like to talk. But until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.